Official field reports. Unedited camera footage. Pure justice. You are watching Bodycam incident reports.
Don't move! Stop reaching! You're loitering! Turn around now!
Officer, I'm waiting for a prescription. I have ticket 42. I am not resisting.
Hands behind your back! Do it now or you're getting tased!
I'm complying, but I have a service-connected shoulder injury. If you twist my arm...
Stop resisting!
Officer Kyle Braden didn't look at the hat. He didn't look at the calm, weathered face of the man he was screaming at. He didn't see the dignity or the discipline. All he saw was a large black man in a green field jacket standing near the pharmacy counter, and in Braden's mind, that equaled a threat. He reached for his taser, his knuckles white against the black plastic grip. But what Officer Braden didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know because he hadn't bothered to ask a single investigative question, was that the man standing before him was Master Sergeant Marcus Thorne, retired United States Marine Corps. He didn't know that Thorne was a Purple Heart recipient who had carried his wounded brothers out of the fire in the Gulf. He didn't know that Thorne was the former head deacon of the largest Baptist church in the county, and a man who sat on the Police Civilian Oversight Board 3 towns over. Officer Braden was about to put handcuffs on a national hero. He was about to physically assault a disabled veteran for the crime of waiting in line, and he was about to launch a chain of events that would expose a rot so deep in the department that it would make national headlines for months. Before we dive deeper into this infuriating and absolutely heartbreaking story, I need you to do something for me. Stop what you're doing and drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from, your state, your city, your country. And if you believe that our veterans deserve respect, not harassment, I want you to hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to make your blood boil, but you need to see how it ends, because justice does come, and it comes hard. You don't want to miss what happens to Officer Braden when the truth comes out. Marcus Thorne was not a man who panicked. Panic was a luxury he had given up in 1991 during a mortar attack outside of Kuwait City. Standing in the fluorescent aisle of the CVS pharmacy, surrounded by greeting cards and vitamins, his pulse barely climbed above 70 beats per minute. He watched Officer Braden with the analytical detachment of a man who had trained hundreds of young Marines. He saw the shaking hands, the sweat on the officer's upper lip, the wide, frantic eyes. He recognized the signs of an untrained, fearful man with too much power and not enough discipline. "Officer," Thorne said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that carried to the back of the store. "I am going to slowly reach for my identification. It is in my back right pocket. I am telling you this now so you do not mistake my movement for a weapon." "Don't you move!" Braden yelled, stepping forward, invading Thorne's personal space. "You don't reach for anything until I tell you to. You are detained for disorderly conduct and loitering." "Loitering?" Thorne repeated, a hint of steel entering his voice. "I have a ticket number in my hand, number 42. They just called 41. That is not loitering, officer. That is commerce." "Shut up. Turn around." Braden lunged, grabbing Thorne's arm. Thorne didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He stood like a statue rooted to the earth. "I am complying with your physical control," Thorne stated loudly for the witnesses. "But I am notifying you that I have a service-connected shoulder injury. If you wrench that arm, you will cause permanent damage and you will be held liable." Braden didn't listen. He twisted the arm behind Thorne's back with unnecessary force. A sharp, sickening pop echoed in the quiet store. Thorne grimaced, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple, but he didn't cry out. He just looked at the young woman in the aisle who was holding up her phone. "Record everything," he said to her. "Do not stop." To understand the gravity of what was happening in that pharmacy aisle, you have to understand the man Marcus Thorne was. He wasn't just an elderly man running an errand. He was an institution in his community. At 62 years old, Marcus still carried himself with the ramrod posture of a drill instructor. His hair was gray and close-cropped, his face lined with the kind of character that only comes from decades of hard work and harder choices. He had spent 26 years in the Marine Corps. He had seen the world at its worst and its best. After retiring, he hadn't slowed down. He dedicated his life to two things: his wife of 40 years, Sarah, and his fellow veterans who were struggling to reintegrate into civilian life. Marcus ran a nonprofit that helped vets file their disability claims. He was the guy you called when the VA paperwork got lost. He was the guy who drove you to your physical therapy appointments when your car broke down. He was a man of honor, precision, and immense patience. That Tuesday morning had started like any other. Sarah was recovering from hip surgery, and the pain was keeping her up at night. Her prescription had run out, and the refill was finally ready. Marcus had kissed her on the forehead, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and told her he'd be back in 20 minutes. He put on his favorite field jacket, the one with the subtle USMC pin on the collar, and his combat wounded ball cap. It wasn't about vanity. It was about identity. It was a signal to the world that he had paid his dues. He drove his pristine 2018 Ford F-150 to the pharmacy. The truck was his pride and joy, fitted with veteran plates that read SMPRFI. He parked perfectly between the lines, locked the truck, and walked into the store. The pharmacy was busy. It was flu season, and the line snaked back past the blood pressure machine. Marcus took a ticket number 42 and stepped to the side to wait. He wasn't blocking the aisle. He wasn't bothering anyone. He stood near the blood pressure monitor, checking his watch, calculating how long it would take to get back to Sarah. He was thinking about whether he should pick up some ginger ale, which she liked when she was feeling nauseous. He had been standing there for perhaps 7 minutes when the automatic doors at the front of the store slid open. Officer Kyle Braden walked in. Braden was 29 years old, but he acted like a teenager with a badge. He had been on the force for 3 years, a lateral transfer from a smaller department where he'd had performance issues that were never fully disclosed. He was patrolling alone that day, scanning for trouble where there wasn't any. The dispatch call had been vague. A frantic manager from a different store across the street had called about a suspicious male looking into cars. No description of clothing, no description of height, just suspicious male. Braden had cruised the parking lot, seen nothing, and decided to check the businesses. He walked into the CVS. He saw a mother with a crying baby. He saw an elderly white man reading a newspaper. And then he saw Marcus Thorne. Thorne was tall, 6'3". He was black. He was standing still, observing the room, a habit ingrained from decades of situational awareness training. To a racist cop looking for a target, calm observation looks like casing the joint. Confidence looks like arrogance. And existing while black looks like a threat. Braden didn't ask the manager if there was a problem. He didn't ask the pharmacist if the man was waiting for an order. He beelined straight for Marcus, his hand already drifting toward his belt. Marcus saw him coming. He saw the aggressive stride, the locked jaw. He had seen that look before, usually on green recruits who were about to make a dangerous mistake with live ammunition. Marcus didn't move. He didn't run. He had no reason to. He just turned his body slightly to face the officer, offering a polite nod. "Morning, officer," Marcus said. Braden didn't return the greeting. He stopped 3 feet away, blocking Marcus's path to the counter. "What are you doing here?" "I'm waiting for a prescription," Marcus said evenly. "You've been standing in this aisle for a while. We got a call about suspicious activity, looking into cars." Marcus blinked, confused but polite. "I just arrived 10 minutes ago. I parked my truck, came straight in. You can check the cameras." "I'm not asking about cameras. I'm asking what you're doing loitering by the pharmacy. You casing the register." The accusation was so absurd, so insulting, that Marcus almost laughed. But he knew better. He knew that laughing at a man like Braden was dangerous. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming serious. "I am a retired master sergeant. I don't case pharmacies. I am waiting for my wife's pain medication. If you want to verify that, you can ask the pharmacist right there. Her name is Linda. She knows me." It was a reasonable offer, a logical solution. All Braden had to do was turn his head 10 degrees to the right and ask, "Linda, is this guy waiting for meds?" But Braden didn't turn his head. He stepped closer. "I don't need to ask her anything. I'm talking to you, and I don't like your attitude." "I don't have an attitude," Marcus said. "I have facts. You seem to be struggling with them." That was the moment the switch flipped. That was the moment Braden decided this wasn't an investigation anymore. It was a contest of dominance. And he was determined to win no matter what the Constitution had to say about it. The air in the pharmacy seemed to vanish, replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. The quiet hum of the refrigerators and the soft pop music on the overhead speakers faded into the background as customers stopped what they were doing. They sensed the shift. The predator-prey dynamic that had suddenly materialized in the vitamin aisle. "Let's see some ID," Braden demanded, his voice echoing too loudly in the confined space. Marcus didn't reach for his wallet. He knew the law better than the man standing in front of him. He had taught classes on civil liberties to young recruits. He knew that in this state this was a stop and identify situation only if there was reasonable suspicion of a crime. There was no crime. There was a man standing in a store. "Officer," Marcus said, keeping his hands clearly visible away from his body. "Am I under arrest?" "I asked for ID," Braden snapped. "And I am asking if I am under arrest, or if I am being detained. Because if I am not, I don't have to show you my papers just because you walked up to me." "You are being detained," Braden said, his face flushing a blotchy red, "for suspicion of loitering and disorderly conduct." "Disorderly conduct requires a disturbance," Marcus countered calmly. "The only person creating a disturbance here is you. You are shouting. I am speaking at a conversational volume. As for loitering, I have business here. Linda." Marcus raised his voice slightly, not in anger but in command. He looked past the officer to the white-coated pharmacist who was watching with wide eyes behind the safety glass. "Linda, is my prescription for Sarah Thorne ready?" Linda, the pharmacist, looked terrified. She looked at the angry cop, then at Marcus. Yes, Mr. Thorne. It's right here in the bin. I was just about to call number 42. "Thank you, Linda," Marcus said, returning his gaze to Braden. "There. The investigation is complete. I am a customer. I am waiting for my product. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to pay and get home to my wife." It should have ended there. Any rational officer, any peacekeeper interested in truth would have backed down. They would have said, "My apologies, sir, bad info," and walked away. But Braden wasn't interested in truth. He was interested in submission. He had been challenged in front of an audience, a middle-aged woman with a cart full of diapers, a teenager in a hoodie, an older gentleman with a cane. They were all watching. If he backed down now, in his twisted logic, he would look weak. "I didn't say you could go," Braden growled. He moved his hand to his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a non-compliant male at the CVS on Main. Send backup." "Non-compliant." Marcus shook his head, a look of profound disappointment crossing his face. "Son, you are digging a hole. Put the shovel down." "Don't call me son," Braden yelled. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." This was the escalation point, the point of no return. "On what grounds?" Marcus asked, his voice firm, unyielding. "You have no probable cause. You have no reasonable suspicion. You are harassing a citizen based on nothing but your own ego. I'm giving you a lawful order. An order that violates the Constitution is not lawful," Marcus stated. "I fought for that document. I bled for it. I am not going to let you trample on it in aisle 4. A woman in a blue nursing scrub top standing near the shampoo section had her phone out now. The red record light was blinking. She stepped a little closer, brave but shaking. "Officer, he hasn't done anything," she said. "We've all been standing here. He's just waiting." Braden whipped his head around. Back up, or you're going for obstruction." He turned back to Marcus, adrenaline flooding his system, washing away judgment. He didn't see a grandfather. He didn't see a veteran. He saw an enemy. "Last warning." Braden set his hand, uncalming from his taser and moving to his handcuffs. Marcus sighed. He saw the inevitable. He knew that physically resisting would give this boy the excuse to use the taser, or worse, the gun. Marcus had survived war. He wasn't going to die in a CVS because of a frightened child with a badge. He made the tactical decision to submit to the physical arrest, to preserve his life, and fight the battle in the courtroom. "I am going to turn around," Marcus said slowly, narrating his actions for the camera. "I am doing this under duress. I am not consenting to this search or this seizure." He turned his back to Braden. He did it with a slow, deliberate dignity that made the officer look even more frantic by comparison. "Hands behind your back." Braden grabbed Marcus's left wrist. "Careful with the left shoulder." Marcus warned, his voice tight. "It is surgically reconstructed. It does not rotate fully." "Stop resisting," Braden screamed, though Marcus wasn't resisting. Braden yanked the arm up high up the back, far past the natural range of motion for a healthy man, let alone an injured veteran. The sound was subtle, a wet crunch of scar tissue and tendon giving way. Marcus's knees buckled slightly, his teeth clenching so hard he thought a molar might crack. The pain was blinding, white-hot lightning shooting from his shoulder to his neck. But he didn't give Braden the satisfaction of a scream. He let out a sharp hiss of breath. "You just injured me," Marcus gritted out. "Shut up!" Braden slapped the cuff on the left wrist, then grabbed the right, pulling them together violently. Click, click, click. The metal bit into the skin. "You are under arrest," Braden panted, sweating profusely now. "And you," Marcus whispered the pain, making his voice tremulous but deadly serious, "have just ended your career." The silence that followed the clicking of the handcuffs was heavy, broken only by the soft, stunned whispers of the other shoppers. Braden shoved Marcus forward, pushing him toward the exit. Marcus stumbled slightly, his balance compromised by his hands being pinned behind his back and the searing pain in his shoulder. But he caught himself. He refused to be dragged. He walked. "You don't have to push me," Marcus said. "I am walking." "Move," Braden commanded, gripping Marcus's bicep, his fingers digging into the muscle. As they passed the pharmacy counter, Linda the pharmacist was leaning over the glass tears in her eyes. "Mr. Thorne, I'll call Sarah. I'll tell her what happened." "Tell her not to worry," Marcus called back, his head held high. "Tell her to call Lawyer Jenkins, and tell her I love her." "That's enough talking," Braden snapped. They exited the automatic doors into the bright, harsh sunlight of the parking lot. People were stopping in their tracks. They saw a uniformed officer manhandling an older black man who was dressed better than half the people in the lot. They saw the combat wounded hat on Marcus's head, now slightly askew from the scuffle. Braden marched him to the patrol car parked crookedly in the fire lane. He didn't open the door gently. He grabbed Marcus by the head, a humiliating, unnecessary gesture, and forced him into the cramped back seat of the cruiser. "Watch your head," Braden said sarcastically as he shoved him in. Marcus maneuvered his large frame into the hard plastic seat. The angle forced his injured shoulder into the seat back, sending fresh waves of agony down his arm. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing through the pain, using the meditation techniques he had learned at the VA hospital to manage chronic pain. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Braden slammed the door shut, sealing Marcus in the stifling heat of the car before walking around to the driver's side. Inside the car, the silence was absolute. The safety partition, the cage, separated them. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at the back of Officer Braden's head. He studied the haircut, the set of the shoulders. He saw the tremors in the officer's hands as he tried to put the key in the ignition. He knows, Marcus thought. Deep down, the boy knows he messed up. Braden started the car and pulled out of the lot, sirens off, but driving fast. He was fleeing the scene of his crime, trying to get to the sanctuary of the station where he could write the narrative before the videos surfaced. "You comfortable back there?" Braden asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. His voice lacked the bravado from the store. It sounded thin. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He waited until Braden looked in the mirror again. "Officer, I want you to remember this moment," Marcus said quietly. "I want you to remember the feeling in your gut right now. That is your conscience telling you that you have violated your oath." "I didn't violate anything." "You failed to identify. You resisted." Braden was rehearsing his report out loud. "Review the dashcam audio," Marcus said. "I never refused to identify. I asked for the legal basis of your request. That is a protected activity under the First Amendment. As for resisting, the video will show I stood still until you laid hands on me. And when you did, I warned you about a medical condition which you ignored. That is excessive force, deliberate indifference to a medical need." "You're a jailhouse lawyer, huh?" Braden scoffed, but his eyes darted nervously to the dashboard camera, checking if the recording light was on. It was. "No," Marcus said. "I'm a man who reads, and I'm a man who served. I have a question for you, officer. Did you serve?" Braden stayed silent. He stared at the road. "I didn't think so," Marcus continued. "Because if you had, you would know about rules of engagement. You would know about escalation of force. We didn't treat enemy combatants in Fallujah the way you just treated a citizen in a pharmacy." The car turned a corner, passing a billboard for a personal injury attorney. Marcus memorized the streets. He was building his case file in his mind. Time of arrest, 10:14 a.m. Location CVS. Witnesses: pharmacist Linda, 3 shoppers, 1 recording. Injuries: left rotator cuff, re-tear. Possible nerve damage in wrists. Charges fictitious. Braden shifted in his seat. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the cold reality of paperwork and consequences. As they stopped at a red light, Braden looked out the window and saw a Ford F-150 in the opposing lane. It had a Purple Heart bumper sticker. For the first time, the image of Marcus's truck in the CVS lot flashed in Braden's mind. The pristine black truck, the SMPRFI plate, the handicap placard. Oh God, Braden thought. Was that his truck? A cold knot formed in Braden's stomach. He looked in the rearview mirror again. He looked at the hat on Marcus's lap. It had fallen off during the entry and lay there now. Combat wounded. Braden swallowed hard. He had just arrested a wounded veteran in a military town. "Hey," Braden said, his voice dropping. You really a vet?" Marcus looked out the window, watching the familiar streets pass by. "Master Sergeant, 26 years, retired." Braden didn't say another word for the rest of the drive. The silence in the car wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with the impending crash of a career hitting a brick wall. Braden gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing, trying to figure out how to spin this. He was belligerent. He reached for his waistband. He threatened me. But the camera was blinking red on the dash, and the woman in the aisle had been recording, and Linda, the pharmacist, knew him. There was no spin. There was only the truth, and it was waiting for them at the precinct like a guillotine. The patrol car rolled into the secured sally port of the 4th Precinct. The heavy metal gate rattled shut behind them, casting the garage in shadow. Braden turned off the ignition, but he didn't move immediately. He sat there for a long 5 seconds, taking a breath, steeling himself. He had to commit. If he showed doubt now, he was finished. He had to book this guy. He got out, opened the back door, and pulled Marcus out. "Let's go. Watch your step." Marcus stepped out, his legs stiff. The pain in his shoulder was a dull, throbbing roar, now radiating into his neck. He kept his face neutral. He wasn't going to give them anything. They walked through the heavy steel doors into the processing area. It was a sterile room painted in institutional beige, smelling of floor wax and old coffee. A few other officers were milling about, typing reports or chatting. At the booking desk sat Sergeant Jenkins, a tired-looking man with a mustache who was close to retirement. He didn't look up immediately. "What do we have, Braden?" Jenkins asked, typing on his keyboard. "Disorderly conduct failure to ID resisting arrest." Braden recited, guiding Marcus to the bench where the metal loop was welded to the floor. "Guy was causing a scene at the CVS." Jenkins looked up. He saw Marcus. He saw the jacket. He saw the way Marcus held himself even in handcuffs. Jenkins frowned. "Name?" Jenkins asked Marcus. "Marcus Thorne," he replied clearly. From the back office, the door swung open. Lieutenant Frank Miller walked out holding a mug of coffee. Miller was the watch commander, a 55-year-old former Army Ranger who ran his shift with strict discipline. He was looking at a clipboard, not paying attention to the new arrival. "Jenkins, did we get the stats on the—" Miller's voice trailed off. He stopped walking. He looked at the man standing by the booking bench. Miller squinted. He took 2 steps closer. Then his coffee mug slipped from his fingers. It didn't break, it was plastic, but it clattered loudly on the linoleum floor, spilling brown liquid everywhere. "Top," Miller whispered. Marcus looked over. A small, grim smile touched his lips. "Hello, Frank. It's been a while since the VFW barbecue." The room went dead silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. Lieutenant Miller looked at Officer Braden. His face went from shock to a shade of purple that was genuinely frightening. "Braden, uncuff him, now!" "Sir, he was resisting. He refused to—" "I said uncuff him right now!" Miller roared, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like a cannon shot. Braden fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them once before managing to get the key into the handcuffs. The mechanism clicked and Marcus's arms fell free. He winced visibly as he brought his left arm forward, unable to lift it above his waist. Miller was there in a second, stepping into Braden's space, pushing the younger officer aside. "Marcus, are you okay? Your arm?" "He wrenched it pretty good, Frank," Marcus said, rubbing his wrist. "My rotator cuff feels like it's gone again." Miller turned to Braden. The lieutenant's voice was dangerously quiet now. "You handcuffed Master Sergeant Thorne. You brought him into my house in cuffs. I didn't know who he was, sir. He was loitering at the CVS. I got a call about a suspicious person." "Suspicious." Miller spat the word out. "Marcus Thorne has done more for this community than you will ever do in 10 lifetimes. He is a Purple Heart recipient. He is on the oversight board. Did you even ask him for his ID before you went hands-on?" "I asked. He refused. I asked for the reason for the stop," Marcus corrected calmly. "He couldn't provide one, so he twisted my arm behind my back." Miller looked at Braden with eyes that promised a world of pain. "Give me your body cam, now." Braden unclipped the camera from his chest and handed it over. "Go to the glass office." Miller pointed to the transparent room in the corner. "Sit down. Don't speak to anyone. Don't touch your phone. Just sit there and pray that this man decides not to own this entire precinct by the end of the week." Braden walked to the office, his head low. He could feel the eyes of every other cop on him. The blue wall of silence didn't apply when you attacked one of the good ones. He was alone. Miller turned back to Marcus. "Marcus, I am so sorry. We need to get you to the ER. I'll drive you myself. We'll get this sorted." "No, Frank," Marcus said. He reached into his back pocket slowly, painfully, and pulled out his wallet. He flipped it open to reveal his military ID and the Purple Heart card tucked behind it. "I don't want a ride to the hospital. I want my property returned. I want the case number. And I want you to secure all the footage. Store security dash cam, body cam. Because I'm not just filing a complaint, Frank. I'm filing a lawsuit. The atmosphere in this precinct had shifted from routine boredom to full-blown crisis mode. Lieutenant Miller knew exactly what was happening. He wasn't just looking at a bad arrest. He was looking at a PR nuclear bomb. He had already called the captain, who was rushing in from his day off. Marcus sat in a chair in the lobby, refusing the ice pack a rookie officer had offered him. He wanted the pain to be documented by a doctor, not mitigated by the police. He held his phone to his ear with his good hand. Yes, Lawyer Jenkins, that's right. False arrest, excessive force, Section 1983 violation, and assault and battery. I'm at the 4th precinct. Come get me. He hung up and dialed again. Sarah? Yes, honey? I'm okay. There was a delay. No, I haven't got the meds yet. I'm going to be a little longer. I need you to call Pastor Lewis. Tell him to meet me at the hospital, and tell him to bring the folks from the Veterans Committee. Marcus was mobilizing. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't throwing chairs. He was organizing an army. By the time he walked out of that station, he would have a legal team, a spiritual support network, and media contacts ready to go. In the glass office, Officer Braden sat with his head in his hands. He watched through the window as Lieutenant Miller spoke to Marcus with deferential respect. He saw the captain arrive red-faced and out of breath, rushing over to shake Marcus's hand and apologize profusely. Braden realized with a sickening clarity that his life as he knew it was over. He had operated under the assumption that his badge gave him immunity from reality. He thought he could bully his way through the world. That suspicious person was a magic phrase that excused any behavior. He had never encountered a man who had more authority than the badge. The door to the glass office opened. It was the captain. He didn't sit down. Badge and gun, on the table, the captain said. Sir, I was just following protocol. He was non-compliant. Braden tried his voice cracking. I just watched the body cam footage, the captain said, his voice cold as ice. You escalated a consensual encounter into an assault in under 90 seconds. You ignored a medical warning. You profiled a decorated veteran. You are suspended pending investigation effective immediately. Put them on the table. Braden unholstered his weapon. He unpinned the badge. He placed them on the laminate table. They made a heavy clunking sound. Get out of my station, the captain said. As Braden walked out the back door, stripped of his authority, Marcus Thorne was walking out the front door. He was flanked by Lieutenant Miller and his lawyer, who had arrived in record time. The sun was high in the sky now. It was a beautiful day, contrasting sharply with the ugly events of the morning. Marcus paused on the steps of the precinct. He looked at the American flag flying on the pole in the courtyard. You okay, Marcus? His lawyer asked. My shoulder is on fire, Marcus said softly. But my spirit is ready for a fight. He turned to Miller. Frank, ensure that video is preserved. If 1 second of it goes missing, it won't, Miller promised. I've already backed it up to the external server. It's locked down. Good. Marcus nodded. Because the world needs to see how this department treats the men who fought for it. He got into his lawyer's car. As they pulled away, Marcus looked back at the station. He wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about the young black kids in his neighborhood who didn't have Purple Hearts or military IDs. He was thinking about what happened to them when they met an Officer Braden. We're going to burn it down, aren't we? His lawyer asked. No, Marcus said. We're going to clean it up. The video hit the internet 24 hours later. The woman who had recorded in the CVS had hesitated at first, but after seeing Marcus being hauled away, she posted it to Facebook with the caption, Just saw a hero get treated like a criminal at CVS. Shame on you, PD. It went viral instantly. The contrast was too stark to ignore. The calm, dignified older man standing still. The screaming, aggressive young cop. The clear warning about the injury. and the heartbreaking sound of the pop when the arm was twisted. Local news picked it up that evening. By the next morning, it was on CNN and Fox News. The headline was devastating: Police assault Purple Heart recipient over loitering claims. The comment sections exploded. Veterans groups were outraged. Civil rights groups were mobilizing. The police department's phone lines were jammed with angry calls from all over the country. Marcus didn't watch the news. He was in the hospital getting an MRI. The results were bad. A severe tear of the rotator cuff requiring another surgery and months of rehabilitation. When he came out of the hospital, the press was waiting. Microphones were shoved in his face. Cameras clicked furiously. Mr. Thorne, what do you have to say to Officer Braden? Marcus stopped. He adjusted his sling. He looked directly into the camera lens. I don't have anything to say to him, Marcus said, his voice grave. But I have something to say to the city council. You hire these boys. You give them guns. You train them to see enemies instead of citizens. This isn't about one bad apple. This is about a tree that is rotting from the roots. And I intend to bring the axe. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. It was a masterclass in civil rights litigation. It didn't just target Braden. It targeted the department's training protocols, their hiring practices, and their history of ignoring complaints against officers. The discovery phase revealed the truth about Kyle Braden. He had 6 previous complaints for excessive force, all against minorities, all dismissed by Internal Affairs as unfounded. But they couldn't dismiss this one, not with the video, not with the medical records, not with the victim being a pillar of the community. The city attorney took one look at the evidence and told the mayor, "Write the check. If this goes to a jury, they will give him the keys to the city." But Marcus didn't just want a check. He refused the first settlement offer, and the second. "It's not about the money," he told his lawyer. "I want policy. I want Braden gone permanently. I want his certification stripped so he can't go work in the next town over. And I want a mandatory training program for interacting with veterans led by veterans." The negotiations dragged on for weeks. The city was terrified of the public trial. Every day the story stayed in the news. The protests outside the station grew larger. Veterans and motorcycle clubs circled the precinct, revving their engines in a show of solidarity. Finally, the city folded. They agreed to every demand. 6 months after the incident, Marcus Thorne walked into the city council meeting. He wasn't wearing his field jacket. He was wearing a suit. His arm was still in a sling, but he moved with the same grace he always had. The room went silent as he approached the podium. The settlement had been finalized that morning. $2.5 million in damages. But more importantly, the Thorne Protocol was now official department policy. It required de-escalation techniques, mandatory intervention by other officers when they witnessed misconduct, and specific training on interacting with citizens with disabilities and PTSD. Officer Kyle Braden had been fired and decertified. He would never carry a badge in the state again. The last anyone heard, he was working at a warehouse in another state, still blaming cancel culture for his downfall, never understanding that it was his own lack of humanity that had cost him everything. Marcus adjusted the microphone. He looked at the council members, then at the packed room behind him. Sarah was there, smiling through her tears, along with Lieutenant Miller and dozens of veterans. "We talk a lot about respect in this country," Marcus began. "We put stickers on our cars, we wave flags, but respect isn't a symbol. Respect is an action. It is how you treat the stranger in the pharmacy line. It is how you wield the power the people have given you." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I fought for a country where a man can wait for his wife's medicine without fear. For a long time, I thought we had won that fight. That day in the CVS showed me the war isn't over. But looking at all of you today, looking at the changes we are making, I have hope. We held the line, and we will keep holding it." The applause was deafening. Marcus walked out of the city hall into the bright afternoon sun. He took a deep breath. His shoulders still ached, and it probably always would a new scar to join the old ones. But the weight on his chest was gone. He got into his truck, the one with the Purple Heart sticker. He drove to the CVS. He walked in, went to the pharmacy counter, and picked up a refill for Sarah. Linda smiled at him, a genuine warm smile. "Good to see you, Mr. Thorne," she said. "Good to be seen, Linda," he replied. "Good to be seen." As he walked back to his truck, the sun setting behind the strip mall, painting the sky in purples and golds, Marcus Thorne finally allowed himself to relax. Justice hadn't been given. It had been taken. Earned. Just like everything else in his life. This story isn't just about one bad cop or one brave veteran. It's about the fragility of our rights and the strength required to defend them. It's about the fact that even our heroes aren't safe from bias, but also that accountability is possible when we stand together and demand it. Marcus Thorne stood tall so that others wouldn't have to be afraid. He turned his pain into protection for his community. And that is the true definition of service. What do you think was a $2.5 million settlement enough for what he went through? And do you think the Thorne Protocol should be adopted in every city in America? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get a conversation started. And if you believe in justice, hit that like button and share this story. The world needs to know.
Every official report and carefully curated archive carries a profound narrative eagerly waiting for an audience. At the very core of every narrative is the fundamental, unwavering search for truth. We sincerely thank you for taking the time to seek that truth with us today.